Welcome to your favorite show, Identities, Umhlobo, where today we're talking about the future of public finance management in Zimbabwe, where we seek to understand the previous, the current, so that we map the future. And in the studio, I am joined by Mr. Manyanya to continue the conversation, and of course the amazing doctor from the University of Zimbabwe. Before we went on the break, doctor, we had already started touching on how public finance management has been in our country, but what are we to see now in Zimbabwe moving forward?
For our country to move forward, let me say there is need for a strong integrity policy. My understanding of integrity policy, it should be a combination of three things. The first one is what I call the software part of it. That is the cultural values that should guide. As an individual, I should have specific values that guide me in making decisions. What is wrong, what is good for our society, for my colleagues, for my nation. Then the third one, it should be the hardware part of public finance management system. What are the rules? What are the procedures? When we are doing things like, for instance, procurement, how best can we do that? Do we have the manuals that prescribe a certain way of doing things? And I think the government is trying to do that. If you look at ease of doing business reforms, they are trying to do that. Then the third one is the operating system. The operating system, we are now looking at the organization and coordination of the processes. That's where we expect to see now the monitoring and evaluation, supervision. Then I can simply say yourself and myself are involved in monitoring and evaluation to ensure that there is inclusive governance in our country.
Mr. Manyan.
The way I approach this is to look at where we're coming from. And as I see it, the problem of corruption in Zimbabwe stretches back to the 1980s, late 1980s. And since that time, it has evolved to become quite complex. And if we don't acknowledge the fact that we have a very complex problem before us, we are likely to come up with very wishy-washy kind of solutions. So the first thing Zimbabweans, I think, need to come to terms with is the fact that the problem of corruption has been allowed to deepen into society. We have seen all these attempts by the previous state to deal with it, attempts of which have failed, going back to the Willowgate scandal. And since then, evidently, the problem of corruption has changed in its form to become even more sophisticated. So we need to think deeply about the tools that we can develop to deal with it. And one other thing that I recognize, I think that we need to acknowledge is Zimbabweans are educated, they're quite professional. And from a managerial level, you can accept that go to any country, you'll find Zimbabweans are leading big corporations and all that. We need to come to terms with the fact that I think the problem of corruption has a certain origin, which is certainly not in the management field. And I think it's now filtering into the management field because of pressure emanating from outside. So we need to be able to separate those issues so that we can clearly identify its source and its origin and how complex it has become over the years, so that we can develop tools and instruments to deal with it. Now I'll come back to what the professor was talking about, the issue of the integrity bill. You call it the integrity bill. And also giving arresting powers to the account committees, even to the Controller and Auditor General. But the measures have to be comprehensive. And
are you proposing the Auditor General has arresting powers or no? I mean, we just want them to do their job and then provide results, right? To allow another, because it's the separation of powers.
Yes, you're quite right there. I think we need to respect the issue of separation of powers. That's important in an evolving democracy. But that comes out of a yearning,
right?
Looking at what has happened over the years. The Controller and Auditor General has done fantastic work bringing out information that is vital.
And speaking the truth.
And I think that has been helpful in getting the citizenry getting more interested and more aware and start asking questions, and the voice of the citizen has actually raised over the past few years. Now, coming from there, what we have a certain expectation, I think, from a reaction position to say, okay, the information has come here. Now, how has the state reacted to that information? This is where our expectation is. We are expecting that I think the state will react to that information in a way that helps us build our democratic institutions, and that also protects the public interest, especially in the evolving public finance management system.
And I think I want to just post it out there to say we've started to see, I mean, there's the new ZAC, Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, which has been recommissioned. I think there's been
reconstituted.
We've started to see some arrests, and the government rather has been actually calling on us citizens to be more patient for processes to take place. And I think there's also a call by citizens saying we want to see more arrests. I think there are certain public figures that are known to have been corrupt, and I think those are some of the things that we're expecting, and we continue seeing. Doctor, before we go on break.
Yeah, that's very correct. What we need are strong institutions. When I say strong institutions, that can act without any influence, neither fear, neither favor, that can deliver. So I think the government is doing well in that regard. Because as you can see,
I mean, that's subject.
Yes, because let's look at now the Auditor General is doing its work, ZAC is now acting, the Public Accounts Committee recently produced a report which looked at how the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, the civil society yourself, as the media, they are doing. We now know, we are now in the know about what exactly is happening. And also the government is taking some measures to rectify some of the situation. What we can only need to do as citizens is that this is not an event. It's a process. It takes time to get the results. So let's say remain focused. Let's have a shared vision and make sure that I play my part, you play your part. This is not only about the leadership, the citizens themselves, everyone has to make sure that, the results are obtained. And eventually, even if you say corruption, it takes two people to tango.
We will come back on that note, and I think it's so powerful that we acknowledge that I think for the first time in Zimbabwe, we really have to acknowledge the issue of information that's being put out there, the Auditor General putting out information, and there's been circulation. I think this is the beginning, because I think there is an allowing of conversations, a release of these reports to the public for public scrutiny, and we're picking it up, the media is picking it up. We are hoping, as Mr. Manyanya said, that what is next is the citizens seeing the government taking 10 measures, taking 10 punitive measures in recovery, because we just don't want to hear kuti vanhu vasungwa. We want to recover for national, because people have been shelling out this country. So I think it's not just about arrest. It's good to arrest. It's also good to sentence. It's also good to recover. We are going to come back and to finalize this issue in our last segment. Do not go away. Stay with us.